Catherine Marsh had been buying the same olive oil for 11 years. Not the supermarket brand, not the house brand, the one with the Italian estate name on the label, the dark glass bottle, the harvest date printed on the back, the certification seal that said extra virgin, cold pressed, single origin, from a specific region of Tuscany that Catherine had actually visited once, on a trip with her husband in 2008, where she had tasted olive oil directly from the press and understood for the first time that olive oil and olive oil were not the same thing. She paid $28 for that bottle, every 2 weeks, for 11 years. She used it on everything, on salads, raw, because she had read that the polyphenols in genuine extra virgin olive oil, the compounds that give it that distinctive peppery finish at the back of the throat, had documented anti-inflammatory and cardiovascular protective effects. She drizzled it on bread. She cooked with it at low temperatures. She bought it specifically because of what she believed it was doing inside her body. In 2019, an investigative food forensics laboratory in Davis, California received a routine testing request for 22 olive oil brands sold in American supermarkets and specialty food stores. Catherine's brand was in the sample. The chromatographic analysis took 4 days. The results for Catherine's bottle, the $28 bottle with the Tuscan estate name and the harvest date and the certification seal, showed something that made the laboratory director, Dr. Selena Morales, pause before writing the report. The sample was not olive oil. It had never been olive oil, and the forensic evidence that proved it had existed in the bottle since the day it was sealed. The fraud is older than the certification system designed to prevent it. Before explaining what was inside Catherine's bottle, and the mechanism that the food forensics laboratory used to identify it with the certainty of a fingerprint, there is a number that sets the scale of what you are about to understand. 80%. That is the estimated proportion of olive oil sold as extra virgin in the United States that fails to meet the chemical and sensory standards required for that classification, according to a study conducted by the UC Davis Olive Center in 2010 and updated in 2015. Not a minor degradation from genuine extra virgin. A systematic, documented, decades-long industrial fraud that covers the most health-conscious, most premium-priced food category in the American supermarket. 80% of what Americans are paying extra virgin prices for is not extra virgin olive oil. Some of it is lower-grade olive oil, refined, deodorized, stripped of the polyphenols that Catherine was buying the bottle specifically to consume. Some of it is olive oil mixed with cheaper vegetable oils, sunflower, soybean, canola, hazelnut, in proportions that make the final product pass casual sensory inspection, while delivering none of the biological value of genuine extra virgin. And some of it, the category that Catherine's bottle fell into, is something else entirely. Something that has no olive in it at all. But before you understand what was in Catherine's bottle specifically, you need to understand why this fraud is so difficult to detect and why the system that was supposed to prevent it has been systematically failing for decades. Because the answer involves a decision made in Rome in 1959 that shaped every bottle of olive oil sold in the world since then. And that decision is the reason Catherine spent 11 years paying for something she never received. The International Olive Council established the classification standards for olive oil in 1959. Extra virgin, the highest classification, required an oleic acid acidity level below 0.8%, absence of defects on sensory panel testing, and chemical parameters consistent with unrefined, cold-pressed olive oil. What the 1959 standard did not include, because the technology did not exist, was isotopic fingerprinting, nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy, pyrolysis gas chromatography, the forensic instruments that food scientists now use to identify not just what is in a bottle, but where the oil came from, how it was processed, and whether it has ever been in contact with an olive at any point in its production. These instruments exist now. They have existed since the 1990s. The European Union uses a version of them in some certification processes. The FDA does not require them for olive oil sold in the United States. Certification bodies operating in the American market largely rely on paperwork, certificates of origin, producer declarations, inspection reports, rather than systematic chemical verification of every batch. The gap between what the technology can detect and what the regulatory system requires to be detected is the gap that the olive oil fraud industry has operated inside for 30 years. In 2016, Tom Mueller, the journalist who spent 5 years investigating olive oil fraud and published his findings in the book Extra Virginity, estimated the annual value of olive oil fraud in the global market at approximately $1.5 billion. Not a small-scale artisan deception. An industrial system with supply chains, distribution networks, and sophisticated label design that specifically mimics the visual language of authenticity. Catherine's bottle had a harvest date, a region of origin, a producer name, and a state address that existed and could be visited. The paperwork was real. The certification seal was issued by a body that had accepted the paperwork. The oil inside the bottle had never touched an olive. Here is what Dr. Selena Morales found when she ran the chromatographic analysis on Catherine's $28 bottle. The fatty acid profile of genuine extra virgin olive oil has a specific signature. High oleic acid content, typically between 55% and 83%, with characteristic ratios of linoleic acid, palmitic acid, and stearic acid that fall within narrow biological ranges because olives, as a species, produce oil with a consistent biochemical signature regardless of region. The ratios can be refined to distinguish Tuscan from Sicilian from Greek and Spanish oils, but all genuine olive oil falls within a recognizable family of profiles. Catherine's sample had an oleic acid content of 28% and a linoleic acid content of 51%. That ratio is not possible in olive oil. It is, however, precisely consistent with refined sunflower oil, the high oleic variety, with the oleic acid content artificially elevated by mixing with a small percentage of genuine olive oil to achieve a sensory profile that passes a casual smell test. The chlorophyll content of the sample was consistent with added green coloring, not with the natural chlorophyll present in fresh-pressed olive oil. The polyphenol content, the compounds Catherine was purchasing the oil specifically to consume, was below the detection threshold of the instrument. There were no polyphenols. The anti-inflammatory compounds that Catherine had been adding to her salads for 11 years were absent from every bottle she had opened. The bottle had delivered calories. It had delivered fat. It had not delivered a single milligram of the bioactive compounds Catherine believed she was consuming. And here is the detail that makes Dr. Morales' report a forensic accusation rather than a quality assessment. The chlorophyll additives and the fatty acid profile were consistent with an industrial blending operation, not with any variation in olive oil quality or storage conditions. The fraud was deliberate, reproducible, and had been present in this product for long enough that multiple production batches showed the same adulteration signature. The health cost of this fraud is harder to quantify than the financial cost, but no less real. Genuine extra virgin olive oil contains oleocanthal, a polyphenol that researchers at the Monell Chemical Senses Center in Philadelphia identified in 2005 as producing anti-inflammatory effects through the same molecular pathway as ibuprofen. Gary Beauchamp and colleagues published the finding in Nature. Oleocanthal inhibits cyclooxygenase enzymes COX-1 and COX-2, with potency roughly equivalent to a 10% ibuprofen dose. It is the compound that produces the distinctive throat-irritating peppery finish in genuine extra virgin olive oil, the quality that Catherine had experienced at the press in Tuscany and recognized in the bottle she had been buying for 11 years. The bottle she had been buying contained no oleocanthal, no measurable polyphenols, the peppery finish she remembered from Tuscany, and did not taste in her bottles but attributed to individual variation between harvests, was absent because there were no olives in the bottle. The Mediterranean diet's documented cardiovascular and anti-inflammatory benefits, the subject of decades of epidemiological research including the landmark Predimed trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2013, are partially attributed to the polyphenol content of genuine extra virgin olive oil. People who built their understanding of the Mediterranean diet around premium olive oil and were consuming adulterated product were receiving the fat without the bioactive compounds that the epidemiology was actually measuring. Catherine had spent 11 years paying for a health benefit she was not receiving. But the mechanism of the fraud, and who knew, is the part that transformed Dr. Morales' laboratory report from a food safety finding into a criminal investigation. The brand Catherine had been purchasing for 11 years was distributed by an American specialty food company that imported from a supplier network in southern Italy. The Italian supplier had been certified by a private certification body as producing estate-bottled extra virgin olive oil from the named Tuscan region. In 2020, Italian anti-fraud investigators from the Corpo Forestale dello Stato, the Italian Forest Corps, which handles agri-food fraud, raided the supplier's facility in response to a separate investigation into a different brand. What they found was not the Tuscan estate operation described in the certification documents. It was a blending facility, with industrial tanks of refined sunflower oil, high oleic variety, with green colorant in industrial quantities, with bottling lines that filled dark glass bottles, the premium visual format that communicates authenticity, with a blend that cost approximately 80 cents per liter to produce and was being sold to American importers at prices that supported $28 retail bottles. The certification body that had issued the documentation had audited the facility once, 3 years before the raid, during a scheduled visit that the facility had been informed of in advance. The instinct of the American importer was not to investigate the supply chain with the forensic tools that could have detected the fraud. The instinct was to accept the certification, maintain the marketing, and sell Catherine her $28 bottle every 2 weeks for 11 years. The importer knew the certification system was inadequate. They knew because the industry knows. Because Tom Mueller had published his book in 2011. Because the UC Davis study had made headlines in 2010 and 2015. Because any food industry professional paying attention to the trade press knew that the certification system for imported olive oil in the American market was not capable of detecting systematic adulteration. They imported and sold anyway. What the food safety system learned from Catherine's case, from the UC Davis studies, from the Italian raids, and from the $1.5 billion annual fraud market is that olive oil certification in the United States is structurally inadequate, dependent on paperwork and voluntary testing in a category where adulteration is economically rational and forensically detectable only if someone pays for the forensic test. What Catherine never received was the anti-inflammatory compound she paid $28 every 2 weeks for 11 years to consume. The financial calculation is straightforward, approximately $16,744 over 11 years. The health calculation is impossible to make precisely. You cannot measure an anti-inflammatory benefit that was absent, but the Predamid trial documented a 30% reduction in cardiovascular events in participants consuming genuine extra virgin olive oil. Catherine was in the control group without knowing it. The American importer reached a civil settlement with the FTC in 2022. The settlement required revised labeling practices and a compliance monitoring program. No criminal charges were filed. The brand was reformulated, or more precisely, the sourcing was changed and the testing protocol was updated. The $28 price point remained. The seal was real. The oil was never olive. The difference between olive oil that delivers the polyphenols you are paying for and olive oil that delivers refined sunflower oil in a dark glass bottle is not the price, not the dark glass, not the estate name, not the harvest date, and not the certification seal. It is a single physical test you can perform at home in 30 seconds. The refrigerator test. Place a small quantity of genuine extra virgin olive oil in the refrigerator at 4 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. Genuine extra virgin olive oil will partially solidify. It will thicken or form cloudy white waxy deposits because of the natural wax content and the saturated fat fraction present in real olive oil. Refined oils mixed with sunflower oil will not solidify at refrigerator temperature. They will remain completely liquid and clear. This is not a perfect forensic test. Some genuine olive oils solidify less than others depending on their origin and oleic acid content, but it is a reliable first filter. If the oil remains completely liquid and perfectly transparent after 30 minutes in a 4 degrees Celsius refrigerator, it is very likely not genuine extra virgin olive oil. The second test, the throat test. Genuine extra virgin olive oil with meaningful polyphenol content produces a distinctive delayed burning sensation in the back of the throat, not immediately, but 2 to 3 seconds after swallowing a small amount neat. This is the oleocanthal signal. If the oil produces no sensation whatsoever, if it tastes like neutral vegetable fat, it contains no meaningful polyphenol content. If you want chemical certainty, the UC Davis Olive Center has published a list of brands that have passed their independent testing protocols. It is publicly available. It costs nothing to access. It is the result of the same forensic methodology that Dr. Morales used on Catherine's bottle. Catherine had tasted the real thing in Tuscany in 2008. She had not tasted it again for 11 years without knowing. The bottle you have in your kitchen right now, check the refrigerator. The answer is there in 30 minutes. But olive oil fraud is not the only food product where the certification system that American consumers pay premium prices to trust has been documented as systematically inadequate. In the next video, the Parmesan cheese labeled 100% Parmigiano Reggiano that the FDA found in 2016 contained cellulose filler, wood pulp, used to prevent clumping in pre-graded products, present in concentrations up to 8.8% in some samples. The label said 100%. The forensics said otherwise. The same forensics. The same gap between what the technology can detect and what the regulation requires to be tested.